If I were to ask you what land did God promise as an inheritance to Abraham's seed, what would you say? Would you say the land of Canaan or the land of Israel? If you said this, you would be wrong. The Apostle Paul tells us exactly what land is promised to Israel. For the promise to Abraham or to his seed that he would be heir of the world was not through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. Now don't pass over this too quickly. Paul believes that the Abrahamic promise is the whole world, not just the land of Israel. Where did he get this idea? And is he in a state of disagreement with the Old Testament? Consider the strict boundaries of the promised land outlined in the book of Deuteronomy. God will not give so much as the sole of the foot of Edom's territory to Israel. The same thing with Moab. Do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land. And again, I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon. If this is the case, why did Paul think that Abraham's seed was given the whole world? Is Paul alone in believing the strict boundaries of the promised land had been removed? Actually, Paul was not alone in his conclusion that the promised land had expanded to cover the world. This was a common Jewish assumption at the time. Consider a popular Jewish book called Jubilees, which was written about a century before Paul. Kings will come from you, Jacob, and they will rule everywhere that the tracks of mankind have been trod. And I shall give to your seed all of the land under heaven, and they will rule in all nations as they have desired. And after this, all of the earth will be gathered together, and they will inherit it forever. Now we quote from 4th Ezra, which was likely written a decade or so after Paul died. But we, your people, that is, the Jewish people, whom you have called your firstborn, only begotten, zealous for you, and most dear, have been given into their hands. If the world has indeed been created for us, why do we not possess our world as an inheritance? How long will this be so? Notice that both of these writers are just like Paul in that they can simply state Israel's land inheritance is the whole world, and they don't even stop to defend it, because this was such a common assumption among the Jews. But what biblical basis do they have for such a belief? In the interest of time, I will show you just two passages that have piqued the interest of scholars on this issue. The first one comes from Isaiah 54. Remember, in Isaiah 53, the suffering servant accomplishes his work of atoning for the sins of the world. Isaiah 54 describes the result of his work, which includes the expansion of the promised land. It's speaking to Israel when it says, "Enlarge the place of your tent, stretch out the curtains of your dwellings, spare not, lengthen your cords and strengthen your pegs. For you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your descendants will possess nations and will resettle the desolate cities." Now that the suffering servant has died, the strict land restrictions from Deuteronomy are gone. It's time for Israel to inherit the earth. Consider another one. In the Old Testament, Israel's king was referred to as God's son. Psalm chapter 2 says, "I will surely tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will surely give the nations as your inheritance, and the very ends of the earth as your possession." Interpreters from around the time of Paul were able to figure out if the Bible is giving Israel's king the whole earth, then this must mean the expansion of the promised land. For the territory that belongs to Israel's king is what belongs to Israel also. In addition to this, I would also tell you to check out Genesis 15, where Abraham's promised land is bigger than anything that was accomplished in history, even in the time of David and Solomon, stretching all the way to the Euphrates River, which again hints at the promised land's worldwide expansion. Okay, so the land of Israel has expanded to cover the whole world. But who is the seed of Abraham to whom the land promise is made? The Jews? Not exactly, says Paul. Israel's promises have been reworked around the Messiah. This is why Paul says, "And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants, heirs according to promise." The promises made to Abraham pass on to those who are in the Messiah. So even if you're an ethnic Jew, but you don't believe in the Messiah, you do not receive Abraham's promises. You must be in the Messiah in order to be a part of Abraham's seed and to receive Abraham's promises. Remember, we already looked at Romans 4:13, where Paul says that the land inheritance is the whole world. He goes on to discuss this in more detail. That is why it depends on faith, in order that the promise may rest on grace and be guaranteed to all his offspring, not only to the adherents of the law, but also to the one who shares the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. And if we understand that Abraham is the father of all Christians, and that we will receive Abraham's land promises, this will help us clear up some other passages as well. For example, when Jesus promises his followers, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," he's not making some general pithy statement. He is conferring the promise of Abraham's global land inheritance upon his followers. And in Revelation, when those who are bought by the blood of Christ are a kingdom of priests and they reign on the earth, the book is within the same Abrahamic stream of thought as Paul and Jesus. Those who are in the Messiah are true Israel, and we receive Abraham's land promise. The implications of this teaching are many, but I need to address just one. In the evangelical church in the United States, there are a lot of people who like to get involved in political disputes, especially the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These interpreters often cite the land promise made to Abraham and suggest that the strip of land in the Middle East is given to the Jews, and the Arab Palestinians, therefore, are intruders. These interpreters, though Christian, can evince incredible apathy and even ill will toward the Palestinians. To be honest, I don't care what your politics are, but you need to know if you are using the land promises to Israel as a pretext for picking sides in this violent political struggle, you are in the wrong, biblically speaking. The land promise is not for ethnic Jews, it's for the church. And the land promise is not a narrow strip of land anymore, it's the whole world. This promise is not given to us so that we will entangle ourselves in the world's nastiest geopolitical struggles. Rather, it's given so that we will embrace the faith and faithfulness of Jesus, in the hope that we will inherit the global land of Israel. This lesson was taken from a much larger series of teachings I did on the book of Revelation. If you like your biblical content below the surface, feel free to click on my name and check out the other content on my channel. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.